Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our UPharm presentation today. We'll be speaking about the impact of student pharmacists on hypertension management in the underserved Asian community in Chicago. So my name is Karima.
And my name is Kevin.
And my name is Chriselle.
Okay, so today we'll introduce you to our team, provide some background information about hypertension, describe our project details, review the results of our data, and then finally we'll discuss the outcome of our project. So here on this slide, you'll see our team. It consists of second, third, and fourth year pharmacy students that are all part of the UPharm cohort here at UIC College of Pharmacy. So the disease state that our project revolves around is hypertension. So hypertension is also known as high blood pressure. It's a long-term medical condition due to elevated arterial blood pressure. Hypertension can be categorized as normal, elevated, stage 1, and stage 2, depending on the patient's blood pressure reading. Hypertension is also known as a silent killer because of the fact that there are often no signs or symptoms. This can be an issue because if it's left untreated, hypertension can affect multiple organs, such as the heart, kidney, brain, and that can also lead to serious complications such as heart attack, stroke, and kidney damage. According to the American Heart Association, in 2018, hypertension has caused over 1,000 deaths among Asian adults. Because of this alarming number, we all decided to focus our efforts into educating the community about the management of hypertension. So Kevin, Chriselle, and I first learned about the Midwest Asian Health Association, which is also known as MAHA, when we were first year pharmacy students in UPharm. MAHA is a nonprofit clinic located in Chinatown, and the upperclassmen were speaking about their community service here, so we all want to help reduce health disparities in the underserved Asian community in Chicago as well. The three of us would go volunteer together once a month on Saturdays during the clinic hours, which were from 8 to 11 in the morning. We've been providing community outreach education while gathering data for this project for about 2 years now. So what's our mission? Our goal as pharmacy students is to educate the underserved Asian population that have low health literacy about the management of hypertension. We provide services such as blood pressure readings, medication management, and information on healthy lifestyle modifications such as exercise and a heart-healthy low-sodium diet. By doing this, we hope to decrease overall cardiovascular risk in our community. So the next two slides are the most current and up-to-date demographics of Chinatown from 2019. Chinatown is a very dense and heavily populated area in Chicago. Asian Americans make up about 90% of Chinatown, and the population that resides here generally make less income as well. A large percent of the population in this area doesn't speak English well or at all. So because of this language barrier, most patients can't properly understand how to manage their disease states or medications. Unfortunately, most of the residents that reside here also fall below the federal poverty level, which can make it harder for them to access proper medical care or afford their much needed medications. This is why our team wanted to put our efforts into giving back to this community. And now I'll be passing it over to Kevin. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Karima. So in Chinatown, there are a total of 3 pharmacies to serve the dense population in Chinatown, as Karima mentioned. So the green stars represents the independent pharmacy and the red star represent the Walgreens. And as seen on the map, 2 of the 3 pharmacies are independent pharmacies. And oftentimes these independent pharmacies are not contracted with certain insurance, which requires patients to fill at a big chain pharmacy. This causes the local Walgreens to be overwhelmed with patients and who have low health literacy and who require more education and counseling. For example, many of the patient population believe that they do not need to take any medications if they do not have any symptoms, which as healthcare professional, we know this is a misconception. As mentioned by Karima earlier, hypertension generally does not cause any symptoms. Therefore, majority of the patient population either do not know they have hypertension or are not adherent, and as they do not feel any symptoms. Another example would be patients not understanding that carbohydrates can contribute to diabetes. Many of the patients think cutting down sweet is enough to lower their glucose, but they continue to have their diet rich in rice, noodles, and bread, which are common in the Asian culture, which are what are really contributing to the high blood sugar. And then lastly, many of the patient population believe that traditional Chinese medicine over Western medicine. They oftentimes will self-treat with natural products instead of taking their medications that their doctor prescribed for them. Therefore, this patient populations require more healthcare professional and pharmacists to educate and counsel the patients, which is what really led us to why we were interested in this project. So the purpose of this project is really to educate the patient about hypertension, about healthy lifestyle modification, and about their blood pressure reading and the importance of adherence. The way our project is set up is that we have our team members speak with the patients in the waiting area about our project. And then those patients who agreed to take part of our project took a pre-survey. Then the patient went to the blood pressure station and they got their blood pressure measured and was provided with in-depth counseling. Afterwards, patients filled out a post-survey in the waiting area where they were waiting to get their blood drawn. Then we have a team member go over the post-survey with the patient and discuss the correct answers. So here are the next few slides are examples of the survey we provided. So the pre and post survey are the exact same and they're written in both English and Chinese, just so that the patient are able to understand and read it for themselves. So there are no patient identifier collected. We had the patient put their last 4 digits of their phone number so that we can compare the survey results if they come back to MAHA in the future. We also asked the patient about their age, gender, and occupation for some demographic information. We also asked if the patient checked their blood pressure regularly and what they believe to be the normal blood pressure. Here are some additional questions that were asked. So next we asked them about their symptoms of high blood pressure. And we also asked if the patients that do not have symptoms, if their blood pressure reading is high, should they take their medication? And we also asked if they are taking medication and for their high blood pressure, and they do have a normal reading, should they stop their medications themselves? Last week, we asked about if they believe what they believe contribute to high blood pressure. And one of the choices that I want to point out to you is hot air. This is a literal translation of a term that's used in traditional Chinese medicine to talk about the imbalances in the body. And then the last question we asked about their knowledge about how they feel about hypertension. Here are some pictures of us volunteering. So up here in the upper left-hand corner is a picture of us measuring their blood pressure. The picture on the bottom right shows us counseling the patient about their reading and providing them a blood pressure log to monitor at home. Here are some additional pictures of us counseling the patient on their blood pressure. And then on the upper right-hand corner, you see Chriselle getting ready to administer the post-survey in the next rating room. And now I'm going to pass it along to Chriselle to talk about the results of our project.
Thanks, Kevin. So thanks to our time spent volunteering in the MAHA, or Midwest Asian Health Association Clinic, we were able to gather a lot of valuable information about our patients. Our survey participants ranged in age between 23 to 67 years old, with the average patient being 44 years of age. And we had a fairly even gender distribution, with 48% of patients being male, while 52% identified as a female. It was interesting to see the variety of roles that they all had in the community. Many of our patients worked in nail salons and restaurants, and others mentioned serving as a car mechanic, seamstress, or student. Furthermore, something that definitely stood out to our group was the low percentage of patients who checked their blood pressure regularly. According to our data, only 17% of our patients actually check their blood pressure on a regular basis. What we sincerely enjoyed most about this project is how much of an impact we were able to make in this community. There are significant improvements that can be seen in the results of our post-survey as compared to our pre-survey. Question number 1 on our survey asked patients what they consider to be a normal blood pressure. At first, the responses were all across the board and were most likely guesses, with only 47% of patients being able to choose the correct response of less than 120/80. Question number 2 asked them to identify the symptoms of high blood pressure. Initially, 18% of our patients admitted that they did not know, while only 3% were able to select the often no symptoms option. And question number 3 asked, if a patient does not have any symptoms, but their blood pressure reading is high, should they still take their blood pressure medication? This question truly tested our patients' health literacy by assessing whether they are aware of hypertension's reputation for being a silent killer and the risk of inappropriately stopping the use of antihypertensives without consulting their doctor first. Unfortunately, 60% of patients, which is the majority of them, answered no to that question. However, after our time spent counseling patients and answering any additional questions they may have had, 100% of our patients were able to confidently select the right answer by the time the post-survey was administered. Our findings show that after our discussions, all our patients became able to identify a normal blood pressure, understand how you may exhibit no symptoms of high blood pressure, and agree on the importance of medication adherence. Our last 3 questions show similar trends as the first set of questions. Question number 4 is different from the previous question by asking about whether a patient on antihypertensives should stop taking their medication upon getting a single normal blood pressure reading. Sadly, during the pre-survey, 43% of patients were under the impression that they could just stop taking their medication. For question number 5, we asked participants to choose from a list of factors that can contribute to high blood pressure. For the pre-survey, 51% chose hot air, while 27% admitted that they did not know. And only 49% of patients selected high salt intake, while only 53% chose minimal exercise. Again, the post-survey results here for questions 4 and 5 showed drastic improvements, with 100% of patients becoming able to select the appropriate answers. And finally, our favorite question on this survey asked patients to reflect on how knowledgeable they felt in terms of knowing how to maintain a normal blood pressure. At first, some patients rated themselves as low as having a knowledge level of 1, with the average score on the pre-survey being a 2.6 out of 5. However, during the post-survey, following our interactions, the score skyrocketed to an average of 4.8, with most of our patients rating their enhanced knowledge level as a 5 out of 5. Therefore, we not only educated our patients about hypertension, but we also instilled a sense of confidence and empowerment. Overall, we appreciated the time that we got to spend serving our patients at the Midwest Asian Health Association, or MAHA clinic. Not only were we able to contribute to our patients' understanding of an omnipresent disease state, but we also learned a lot from them as well. Although the pandemic put a hold on our efforts for the meantime, we hope that our UPharm group can continue to make a difference in this community in the future. And then we have our references. Thank you all for your time. What questions do you have for us?
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I want to say great job. I personally enjoyed your guys' topic, so I was just wondering what each of your favorite parts were in conducting this project.
Right, that's a great question. So I guess for me personally, I loved how we were each able to learn more about the Asian American community and the different beliefs that they may have within that community specifically. And also the fact that we were given the opportunity to kind of dismiss some misconceptions, and then the fact that we were able to see firsthand how how our participants were able to answer the pre-survey questions. A lot of them were pretty timid and a little shy about it. But after our like counseling and interactions, they were able to answer everything more confidently.
Yeah, let's see. I think my favorite part was the fact that I was able to really work on communication. I don't speak Cantonese or Mandarin. I don't understand it, but I was able to work with my team members on translating. And, as future pharmacists, we're going to have, we're going to have patients that English isn't their first language. So I think this was a good test on my abilities. We're always going to have to counsel and get our message across. And it's an opportunity to get creative and, still educate our patients, even though we might have that language barrier.
And then for me personally, Chinatown is the community that I grew up in, and I noticed that since a young age, I witnessed like it is being an underserved community with a lot of patients that have low health literacy. So as a kid, I always knew I wanted to give back to this community, and being part of UPharm and taking part of this project was a way for me to give back to the community and really educate them about their disease states in hopes that they become more adherent and become healthier. And then my other favorite part about this project is really just working with my team members. So here today presenting is the P4s, but also as Karima showed earlier, there is other team members that we work with, which consists of the P3s and P2s. And they also were really fun to work with. And together, being able to make a positive impact in the community and showing what pharmacists have to offer and what pharmacists can do is the most rewarding part for me.
Thank you. Great job again.
Hi, I have a question about the blood pressure management. And I remember it was 17% that they regularly check their blood pressure. I was wondering if that was just they didn't have enough time for it, or some of the patients did not have a blood pressure machine at home, or some people just couldn't afford one.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as Karima mentioned a little bit earlier about hypertension and how it's oftentimes no symptom. So a lot of our patient population have low health literacy, so they do not understand that what's the importance of measuring their own blood pressure. And even when they're diagnosed of having high blood pressure by their doctor, they still don't believe that they have it just because they feel no symptoms. And also along with that is also access to a blood pressure machine as well. As Karima mentioned in our demographic slides, our patient population is majority are low income. So if they really don't have the money to spend on a blood pressure machine. So if they can avoid it, they definitely would. So those are a lot of contributing factors to why they don't measure their blood pressure. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Great question.
And then I also see in the chat that Ramsha asked, how was your experience in convincing patients to take the survey? So in general, most of the patients that we worked with were pretty encouraging and welcoming to our presence in the clinic. So it didn't really take that much convincing as long as we were pretty honest and transparent of how long it would take to actually complete the survey. And we also touched on the importance of them helping us because we're working on it as part of a project for school. So once we were honest with them about all of those factors, everyone was pretty okay with answering the survey questions.
Yes, and then just to follow up on that, so we actually within our group, we do have a couple team members who are fluent in the language. So in that sense, they already built up trust and was able to communicate with the patient well. So that encourages them to take the survey as well.
Thank you. I just have a quick question about so since you mentioned a lot of people don't have the blood pressure measuring device, was there any step taken in order to provide them or facilitate so they can keep their blood pressure log?
Yes, that's a good question. So we actually provided a couple of resources for them to go about this. So for us being our clinic is a free clinic that's open once every month. So we encourage them to come back to check for the blood pressure. We also offered many locations about the pharmacies that they can go to. Some have a free blood pressure machine outside of the pharmacy where they can measure their blood pressure, or we can just inform them that they can purchase it over the counter, a blood pressure machine if they're able to afford it.
I had a quick question. This is Eamon. I wanted to know, as you said, there were two of the independent pharmacies in the area mostly, and then one Walgreens, I believe. So did most patients use independent or the Walgreens for their prescriptions, and the insurance issues, of course, with the independent pharmacies? Did you like notice anything with that?
In terms of that specifically, we don't know like the exact stats as we didn't work with the pharmacies. We were just really with the Maha clinic. But from my personal experience and from what I know about the community, it really depends on the convenience. So sometimes patients prefer the independent pharmacy because Walgreens have a lot of patients. So maybe they are closer to the independent pharmacy and is able to get their medication faster that way. Other times they would go to the Walgreens because sometimes there are medications from the independent pharmacy that are not in stock that only Walgreens have. Or like I mentioned earlier, and as you mentioned, the insurance issue sometimes dictate them to go to Walgreens.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nebuhe Morezu, and my capstone presentation is on the impact of career guidance in adolescence with a focus in the field of pharmacy. And I was able to start off this project alongside my partners, Anita and Peyton. And so as far as the buy-in of our project, we were actually in the process of coming up with project ideas when we happened to overhear at one of our UPharm meetings that a group of high school students that were on a field trip have visited the College of Pharmacy, and this happened in the early spring of 2019. And they actually became interested in learning more about the program, as well as trying to create some type of long-lasting relationship with the college as well. And so thankfully, our very own Dr. Awe assisted us in establishing a connection with the science department chair, Dr. Felix Igarba, who actually also happened to be the student's instructor. And so after an exchange of conversations, we were able to get approval from the principal as well as the school board of the high school, and we began planning our project. And so the group of students that visited our College of Pharmacy came from the South Shore International College Preparatory High School, and this school is located in the South Shore neighborhood on the southeast side of Chicago. And so the South Shore neighborhood can be considered or is considered one of the many underserved neighborhoods in Chicago. And here I just kind of included some of the main locations that are around or in close proximity to the school. I've also included on the right-hand side just a map view of where exactly the school is located in the South Shore neighborhood. And so we can see here that a major grocery store happens to be Jewel's Osco, and there's pretty much one Jewel's, and it's about less than 1 mile away from the school. However, there are several smaller local food markets that are dispersed throughout the neighborhood as well. The two major pharmacies that are located within the area happen to both be Walgreens. Also in the South Shore neighborhood, there's approximately 15 elementary schools, as well as approximately 3 high schools, including this high school. And the major hospitals include the South Shore Hospital Wellness Center, as well as Jackson Park Hospital and Medical Center. And so here are some of the most recent data on the South Shore neighborhood based on information from censuses that were taken between 2014 and 2018. And so we can see in the first table, the age distribution in South Shore. And there was approximately 26% of individuals in the neighborhood that were ages 19 and younger. In the next table, focusing on race and ethnicity, we can see that the predominant race in the neighborhood is African Americans, which account for over 90% of the population. As far as educational attainment, majority of the individuals in the South Shore neighborhood actually had some type of college education without a degree, and that accounted for a little over 30% of the population. And also in the fourth table, focusing on the household income, we can see that unfortunately, almost 50% of the population earn less than $25,000 per year during the 2014 through 2018 timeframe. And of course, that value could possibly be even higher now due to the impact of COVID, with many individuals having lost their jobs during that timeframe and their source of income. And lastly, here I've just included a table that kind of looked at the employment status during the time. And we can see that during that time frame, there was a fairly good amount of employed individuals versus non-employed individuals. We can see about 83% to 59% we can see about 83% to about 17% of individuals. However, of course, due to the impact of COVID, these numbers have most likely changed. And if we do also want to consider comparing those that are in the labor force to those not in the labor force, we can see that it was pretty much a 60-40 split. So going back into our project, for our population, we targeted the high school students that were in the high school medical program at the school. And it consisted mainly of juniors as well as senior students, predominantly African Americans, ages 16 to 18. And this group of students was also led by the science director, Dr. Felix Egarova. And so the goal of our project was basically to create more awareness of the profession of pharmacy, as well as providing strategies and helpful information for gaining admission into accredited colleges of pharmacy. This was our main focus. However, we did also kind of include general strategies and helpful information for other health fields, including medicine and nursing. And lastly, we wanted to evaluate our impact on their career path decision-making skills. And so as far as the time frame of our project, we plan to do monthly visitations with presentations on various topics related to the field of pharmacy. And we also plan to give pre and post surveys, as well as allow time for questions to basically assess their previous knowledge, as well as their retention of knowledge after the topics were covered. But however, it took a while to start off, and it was actually quite difficult to plan the monthly meetings due to our individual different class schedules and work schedules, as well as time conflicts with the high school students' class schedules as well. Typically, the times that were available for us to hold our sessions at the high school were in the morning time, and they happen to also be during the same time as some of our classes. So me and my partners had to sit down and basically kind of pull our schedules, and we basically decided that we were going to divide and conquer as much as possible, so that even if we couldn't all go at once for each visitation, at least one of us or a pair of us would go, so that we would still be able to accomplish this project and have monthly meetings. And so here our first visit took place on November 8th of 2019. And here we basically covered a overview of the profession of pharmacy in its entirety. And our second visit took place on December 17th of 2019, where we basically went more in depth into the pathway to getting into pharmacy school. And so unfortunately afterwards we had a gap in our visits after the December visit, and we had planned for a visitation in March of 2020. However, this was the time when the restrictions and shutdowns began due to COVID-19. And so our visitations were pretty much suspended until further notice. At the time, as we know, many schools were unsure of the way forward. And so we had decided to kind of give them some time to figure things out and see if we could continue the project. Due to the uncertainty of the time as well as chaos. And it did take a very long time for the high school to completely switch over to virtual learning. And it actually became even more difficult to set up meeting times due to their new virtual learning schedules and our new virtual learning schedules. And also at the time I had just began my clinical rotations as well. But on the other hand, we were able to also conduct additional visitations outside of our planned monthly visitations, which included an induction ceremony where we were basically invited as guest speakers. And we were able to talk about our experiences in pharmacy school, as well as give encouragement and just advice in general to the individuals that were being inducted into their Health Occupations Students of America Association. We were also invited to participate in a science fair as guest judges. And so they wanted us to basically provide constructive feedback to the students to determine how they demonstrated their medical health science knowledge and understanding as well, while they were using evidence-based research methods. And finally, we were also invited during February of 2020, right before all of the chaos, to kind of celebrate Black History Heritage Month with these students as well. And so here I've just kind of included an example of our pre and post surveys. And both surveys actually had the exact same questions. And so they consisted of about 4 to 5 true and false questions. And the purpose of our pre-surveys was really just to kind of gauge their current knowledge of the subject matter, while our post-survey was used to test their retention of knowledge after the topics had been covered. And the answers to the questions were actually provided indirectly through the lecture topics. And so here are the overall survey results from the 2 surveys that we were able to do during our 2 visits. And so during each session, there were approximately 30 students that participated. And overall, majority of the students started off not really having any knowledge of the field of pharmacy whatsoever, or anything related to it, which we kind of expected. And thankfully, after our topics were covered during each section, the students did show great retention of knowledge after each session, as we can see here. And so here I've included the impact of our project, and we found that the students' knowledge of the field of pharmacy really did expand after the few sessions that we had. Also, many of the students did show interest in pursuing careers specifically in pharmacy, and desire to have further mentorship from us, as well as other connections that we may have had. And also, all of the students overall felt more confident and encouraged in their career path decision-making skills. Additionally, students that had other career desires in the health field, as well as outside of the health field, did realize the importance of having some type of mentorship or guidance. And so overall, we were able to conclude that career guidance, as well as advice in adolescence, has a significant impact on their decision-making skills. And it also helps to encourage them to set goals for themselves and actually achieve them. And so here I've just included a picture of our team, myself, as well as Anita and Peyton. And actually, our team has grown and now includes many more UPharm students who will continue on with this project, hopefully when things begin to open more up, and as well as expanding on other ideas for projects that positively impact underserved communities. And with that, these are my references, and I can take any questions.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. Again, part of the UPharm program is to expose underrepresented minority students into the profession, and I think that you guys, did a good job, and the continuation of the project is, something that perhaps in time we'll be able to measure to see how many students from that group matriculated into a pharmacy school, our pharmacy school or any pharmacy school. So thank you so much. Any questions? It's important for you guys to ask questions as part of the participation today.
I have one question. So do you feel like you made like an impact in those that like maybe didn't want to pursue pharmacy, like as in the first place? Maybe you influenced them to maybe change, if that makes sense, like career paths.
Good question.
Yes, yes. I actually think we kind of forgot to capture that fully, but I do remember when we first started that I think we asked just in general how many students were interested in pharmacy specifically, and there weren't that many. But I remember after giving the presentation on like the pathway to pharmacy school, a lot more students were interested specifically in pharmacy because many of them were more interested, I would say, in medicine. But once they kind of realized that the routes are pretty much the same, um, as far as the undergraduate requirements are pretty much the same, I think a lot more showed interest. Also, we kind of, one of our questions was on one of the pre-surveys was about kind of like dispelling a myth of pharmacy that all pharmacists work in retail. And, you know, you'll be surprised, but a lot of them actually thought that that was true, you know, like that was it to pharmacy. But thankfully, from our presentation, we were able to kind of clarify that and expand on all the different areas of pharmacy and how vast they are. And I think that also encouraged them to show more interest in the field of pharmacy, realizing that it wasn't just one particular area.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mo, for those of you that don't know me. And me and Sunny did a presentation specifically focusing on the opioid epidemic based on the perception of healthcare in high school students. So this is just pictures of us, in case you guys don't know us. You can go to the next slide. So let me tell you a little bit about the program that we worked with. So we worked specifically with a program called Minorities in Healthcare. And this program specifically had the goal and vision to empower underrepresented and minority students to pursue routes in healthcare. The main goal was to increase retention rates of students of color and add more diversity through all healthcare fields. So an overview of how the program really worked. Students from all over Chicago, the South Side, the West Side, and Oak Park were recruited to be in this program. They had to apply, and if they were accepted, then it was a year-long program. So the program has about 10 to 20 high school students from all over, and they meet once a month on a Saturday usually with a mentor that they have been assigned. Outside of the program, the students are required to meet with their mentor once or twice a month to continue with the program. If the student successfully finishes the program, they'll receive a small scholarship. Part of the program was to show students about medicine, pharmacy, PT, OT, and nursing. So it really just was a vast range, and they didn't necessarily have to know what they wanted to pursue since these are seniors in high school. But the program was meant to make them aware of the different ways that we pursued. And then they talked about different things such as financial aid, how to apply to schools, and they brought in healthcare panels. So it was really just to show students different aspects of the program. So with our project, the primary goal was to educate the minority healthcare and high school students in order to raise awareness of the opioid epidemic specifically. So a little bit of background on what we went into when we were teaching the students. We talked about opioids, which is a class of drugs naturally found in the opioid poppy plant, and it works to produce a variety of effects in the brain. The primary mechanism for the opioids is to relieve pain, but it can also be used for human body pleasure, also known as a high. So these effects we received from the drugs kind of led to the misuse of opioids throughout the United States. So Just a little bit of background, more background about the epidemic. So in 2015 or 2016, excuse me, over 42,000 people were killed from opioids. And then the opioid overdose numbers have increased by more than 30% since then. And then in 2015 specifically, looking at the youth population from ages 15 to 24, about 4,000 youth have died from a drug-related overdose, and half of those have been from opioids. So you can see that this is a very pressing issue since so many people are suffering from overdoses and even having fatalities. Specifically looking at Chicago, we kind of just looked at what the HHS was reporting. And in 2015, there were 111 deaths from the opioid epidemic. And then it increased in 2016 to 411, which is over 250% increase. And then in 2017, we have about 460 deaths. So you can just see the numbers keep going up. We do not have recent data from 2016 onto the present, but as you can see from what I said, the numbers have been increasing. So why should we care? This crisis is specifically prevalent in urban, rural, and economic disadvantaged communities. So we can see that the numbers are more in those communities than others, where poverty is associated with poor physical and mental well-being. It's also in areas where healthcare access is limited, and opioid prescriptions are higher there, and treatment programs are fewer. So the primary objective of our study specifically when we were going into this nonprofit program to educate was to understand the knowledge of the level of opioids in the epidemic from the students. And then we wanted to observe and listen to the impact that opioids have had on their lives thus far and promote health literacy and awareness of the opioid epidemic in the United States.
So for the methods, 24 students conducted the study at the University of Illinois at Chicago Applied Science Building on West Campus. Students were given time to answer the general and personal questions. A presentation was performed on the opioid epidemic to healthcare and high school students that attend the monthly minority mentorship session/seminar. The healthcare students were given a pre-survey and then after the presentation, a post-survey in order to see the level of alertness and attentiveness. The high school students were given the same scenario as the healthcare students. Then we compared the data we collected from the pre/post surveys between the healthcare and high school students in order to see any similarities and difference based on the information that was provided to them. Additionally, the additional questions that were asked to the healthcare and high school students also determined their level of awareness on the opioid epidemic and the lives affected by the epidemic prior to the presentation. Following the presentation and the completion of the questionnaire, the students were offered the opportunity to ask any sort of questions or concerns that they may have. So the general type of questions that were asked. So the opioid epidemic that takes a life every 11 minutes. Chemically, there's a huge difference between prescriptions and opioids people get from doctors or healthcare professionals and heroin. At one point, America consumed 70% of the world's oxycodone. Drug overdose deaths from prescription opioids increased 6 times from 1999 to 2017. And the fifth question was nearly 80% of heroin users started with prescription opioids. Pretty much most of them were true and false. And then we asked some personal questions to see like how many lives were affected. So some of the personal questions we asked were, have you or someone close to you been personally affected by opioids? Have you ever received any informative or educational lectures on opioids or the opioid crisis? From this questionnaire, we added, here's the pre and post survey questions we asked. So just to see their attentiveness. So the pre-questions we asked of which of the following is not a sign of opioid overdose. If someone has a overdose in opioids, what is the best method to reverse the effects? Select all apply. And what was the main contributor of the second wave of the epidemic? And then we didn't ask the same questions. We wanted to make sure if they were focused on the presentation. So some of the different questions we asked was, which of the following is not a sign of the opioid overdose? If someone has an overdose on opioids, what is the best method to use to reverse the effects? And then what was the main contributor of the second wave? Actually, we did ask them the same questions. My fault, sorry. So here, the ethnicity that we add was like African American, so 5 out of 14, 38%. Caucasian, 4 out of 14, 31%. Hispanic, Latino, 23%. Asian, 2 out of 14, which was 14%. That was the healthcare students. And ethnicity, for the high school students, we had African American, 6 out of 10, which was 60%. Hispanic Latino, 3 out of 10, which was 30%, and Caucasians, 1 out of 10, which was 10%. So based on the general questions we asked, for the healthcare, for the high school students, number of people that got correct, which was 3, the 100%, number of people that got 80%, which was 3, number of people that got 60%, which was 2, and then the number of people that got 40%, which was 2 as well. For the healthcare students, majority of them was like 100% for the general questions. So around like roughly like 9-10 students, 4 students got 80%, and 1 student got 40% for the healthcare students. So for the personal questions, we're going for the high school students. So most of them that were not affected by that, which was no, compared to the yes, and the majority for the healthcare students, it was yes compared to no. So now we're going for the pre and post survey quiz. So this is the pre-quiz. Excuse me. This was we have the pre and post quiz for both the healthcare and high school students. So for the healthcare students, prior to the presentation, the knowledge level was 40%. After the presentation, the post quiz, the knowledge level was 76%. For the high school students, the knowledge level was 37%. And after the presentation, the knowledge level was 83%. So the purpose of the study, as Mo mentioned, is to see the level of knowledge of opioids and opioid epidemic, anyone they knew that has been affected by it, and to see if they already are ready to spread awareness from the students. The main approach of the study to inform the students about what an opioid is, how the epidemic began, and the rising death toll. Based off the first part of our data, general questions, the high school students were not as knowledgeable about the opioids and the epidemic. The health school students were as knowledgeable, however, after the presentation, they told us that more information can always be taught, and that information about opioids and the epidemic is never limited. On the second part of our data, the personal questions, there was a huge discrepancy in the yes and no responses when comparing the high school and healthcare students. It was based off the assumption that high school students would answer more yes than no's. Data showed that healthcare students answered more yes than no's, which proved that they were more likely to know someone affected by opioid epidemic than the high school students. And then on our last part of the data, the pre and post quiz, it was predicted that there would not be a huge difference between the pre and post quiz on the number of answered corrects. However, there were students who did not have a high level prior knowledge about the opioids and the epidemic, even though minor presentations have been given to the students. This led to a significant difference between the pre and post scores. Overall, the primary objective of the study went as expected. Students were not as aware about opioids and the epidemics. Students did have friends or loved ones that have been affected by the epidemic. The next generation / current students are ready to make a difference in their community, as in spread awareness about opioids and the epidemic, based off the questionnaires asked after the presentation that were presented to them, and the percentage of correct responses from the post quiz. Some limitations that we had, it was a small group of students. Students had some sort of prior knowledge, but not as high about the opioid and the epidemic. Students kept changing their answers in the pre-quiz. Questions asked by the students mainly pertain to drug naloxone instead of the different topics about the opioid epidemic. Here's some pictures about our presentation at the seminar. Here's the group. So some final thoughts from me and Mo. So for me personally, I thought this was a great group of audience we did our project with. Everyone was attentive during the presentation. They all asked us questions specifically about naloxone. I could tell that these students want to make a difference within their lives and the lives of their loved ones. They love having us and want us to come back and do another presentation on any topic. Personally, I truly enjoyed education to the next generation of students about this important health literacy topic. Would I do it again? The answer is yes. For Mo, he enjoyed this project. He felt that our topic was very important and relevant to the population we were presenting it to. He was very impressed with the amount of questions that were asked after we informed the students about this important health literacy topic. Everyone involved was engaged and gave excellent feedback on what they learned and enjoyed about the topic. He and Mo enjoyed working with this population of people and was happy to see through the data that truly gained knowledge from what we had to say. Here's a poster that Mo and I created, and here are our references, and that's pretty much it. Any questions? So I got a question. For all the medical issues, what actually inspired you to pursue this topic in particular? Personally, the reason why I chose opioids is like I have in retail as well as during my modules, I've seen so many like opioid prescriptions, like tons and tons and tons. And you could see whenever patients come in, they're always like, where's my opioid? Specifically speaking, not like a general medication like a atorvastatin or like a blood pressure medication, for example. They're specifically more like up to tight of like, where's my opioid medication? I need my opioid medication. It could be related to pain. It could be related to any other topic, but it's always emphasized on opioids. So I feel like they're like, it could come to the assumption that they're like abusing the medication then as prescribed as they're supposed to be taken. So I feel like a topic like this to our next generation of healthcare students should be mentioned that, okay, we need to do something about this in order to decrease the epidemic that's going on and the high prescription numbers of opioids being prescribed to patients that we see today. What about you, Mo?
Yeah, I agree. I think that it kind of hit home for our patient population specifically. I think that we noticed that the numbers have been going up. So that's why we decided to choose that. We just wanted to pick something that was relevant and like continuing to be relevant that we could really make a difference for.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Falu Ogunmari, and I will be talking to you all today about my project, which is improving the attitudes towards science using a hands-on science projects in an underserved pediatric population. So to start off with the background, this project actually was a continuation of a previous project that I was a part of during my P2 year. A group of students and I were doing diabetes and hypertension education seminars at a different church on the south side of Chicago. And after our time there, we were looking to continue that project at another church, and we were led in partnership with the Assembly of Faith Outreach Center. And through talking with some of the parishioners who attend that church, we figured out that they had an after-school care program with children who all reside in predominantly low-income African-American areas within Morgan Park, Roseland, Rosemore, and Pullman. And we partnered with this after-school care program that hosts about 20 to 30 children from grades pre-K to 8th grade, and which many of them have very lacking science programs within their schools. Many of their programs consist of them watching YouTube videos and learning different science concepts from that. They never really have any hands-on experience working with science. And through our research with my group, we learned that studies have shown that students respond to science when they have hands-on involvement. And there was in the science and engineering indicators of 2018, data showed that there is a disparity in minorities, particularly in the science community. There's 12% of African Americans in the United States, but only 5% of them hold science and engineering jobs. And we believe that if you get children excited and inspired by working with science concepts, they would be more likely to join the healthcare and science field. I can speak for myself that one of the main reasons why I'm even in pharmacy today is because I had such an active role in participating in science fairs and in science projects during my elementary school days that it inspired me to pursue a career in science, which is what we were trying to give to these children. So the objective of our project was to determine if providing students with opportunities to have hands-on experience with science concepts would improve their feelings towards science, specifically in an underserved pediatric population. So this is actually a screenshot of our curriculum that we were doing with the kids. We met every Thursday between 3:30 and 5:30, and every week we either had a guest speaker that talked about a different science concept, or we would have different experiments for them. We've done a variety of experiments with them, such as compounding. We made soap, we made bath bombs. We taught them how to extract DNA from fruit. We taught them how to mold DNA and mold a form of the heart. And our end goal with the entire curriculum was for the students to hold a science fair for their community. And each of them were going to do a science project on their own and really implementing the scientific method to them, because many of them didn't know what that was and hadn't learned that in school, and giving them a chance to really be in charge of their own project and taking the reins and learning something new on their own with our help as well. So these are some pictures of what we worked on, teaching them how to use scales, teaching them what the heart looks like, teaching them how to use microscopes, things of that nature. So to determine if there was a change in emotions towards science, we used a feelings-face magnet board, which is a child-friendly adaptation of the Jim Borgman's feeling faces. We decided to use this type of method instead of a survey because we had such a wide range of ages within our group. Some of the kids were not old enough to read yet, and some of them were. And we wanted to have a consistent way of measuring whether or not we were making an impact with them. And it's very easy for children to recognize emotions and faces. So we figured if we could put faces on a magnet and ask them, how did you feel about science at the beginning of our time together? And, question whether or not they were able to understand, and then see, at the end of the program, was there a change in the feelings that they felt about our program with them? So this is an example of our magnet board. There was different faces of different races, just so the children found something that they could identify with. And it was the first question was, how did you feel on your first day in the lab? And then the second question was, how do you feel about it today? Unfortunately, because of COVID, we weren't able to ask them how they felt at the end because our program was cut short. But these are the results of what we've gained from the beginning to the midpoint of where COVID stopped the program. So in the beginning, many of the children said that they felt confident. Some of them were a little embarrassed that they didn't know a lot of the concepts we were talking about. Some of them were a little bit suspicious, shy, anxious. And then over time, towards the end, some of them felt a little confused, depressed, ecstatic, and happy. And for those that felt depressed and a little bit lacking confidence, we attested that to us pushing them out of their comfort zone. A lot of them, like I said before, had never even done any of the things that we were trying to teach them. A lot of them couldn't even say a lot of the words that we were using. A lot of them didn't know what hypothesis meant or what how to conduct a science project in any form or fashion. So we felt like some of those students were feeling a little depressed or confused because this is the first time that they're doing something that they're extremely uncomfortable with. But also there was a lack of students saying that they were feeling confident. Again, we attested that to us pushing them out of their comfort zone and trying new concepts. But more students towards the end of the lab were feeling happy and ecstatic and hopeful than they were before. And 0 of the students were feeling shy, guilty, embarrassed, or anxious towards the end of the lab. So we took that as their emotions were improving over the course of the series. Like I said before, because of the lack of negative emotions and responses, and more emphasis on hopeful, ecstatic. We were saying that we were successful in promoting science and improving children's emotions towards learning about science. And obviously our long-term goal of this project is to establish a base of continuing science learning and to see if they will end up choosing careers in science. But unfortunately, we're not able to measure that because we won't be with these children for the next 10 plus years. But the fact that they were even enthusiastic about learning more was really encouraging. And because of COVID, like I said, our program was brought to an end. The children weren't able to do their science fair for their community. And instead we tried to switch to an online curriculum towards the beginning of COVID, but we had a low turnout, many of which was due to socioeconomic reasons, including lack of technology. Many of the students did not have access to a computer, didn't have internet in their homes. So us having online learning and online activities for them to do, many of them couldn't have access to them. But moving forward, Paul is continuing on with this project with his new team, and they are actually mainly online, and their goal for the end of this year, their capstone, is they're building a fruit and vegetable garden with the children. And although it was a slow start with trying to get everybody online, it's so far it's been going really well, and hopefully they will be able to meet in person soon. And also, Paul and I were able to present our project in the National Pharmaceutical Association poster presentation this past November, and able to discuss with others across the United States about our project and the impact that we made with the students in this after-school care program. And these are my acknowledgements. Definitely want to acknowledge Paul, who was really the main leader of this project and is still continuing to do great work with them, and as well as Dr. Young and Latoya and Pastor Sharon, and of course, Dr. Awe as well. Any questions?
Thank you, Folo. That was really great. Thank you for awarding me the PharmD degree. Also, I'm a PhD, not PharmD, but I'll take it.
Free, so why not?
Any questions? Thank you, Folo.
Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Rodriguez. So today I will be presenting on my diabetes support group, which took place in Humboldt Park. So my team members, as of right now, was myself and Nilmari Ayala Fontanes. So she will be taking over for me, hopefully. Presentation outline for today, so I'll just go into demographics, how we got in touch with the site, our goals, what our curriculum was, our assessment that we did, results, discussion, some obstacles, and then conclusion and future plans. So to start with some demographics of West Humboldt Park, the population is about a little over 56,000, with 22.7% of that being Hispanics, and 16.8% being African Americans or non-Hispanic Blacks. Average family income is about 36% of households make less than $25,000 a year, and about 28.3% make between $25,000 and about $50,000 a year. In terms of their education, 29% have less than a high school diploma, and 30.4% have a high school diploma or equivalent. So their health literacy is low in general. Just some more info, their employment, so about 38.1% of the population was not in the labor force, and the 61.9% that are in, about 12.1% was unemployed. And this information is coming from the June 2020 community data snapshot of Humboldt Park. So in terms of their insurance, about 57% of the population has public insurance and 19% do remain uninsured. For transportation, because that's a big detriment that some could have, about 26.8% do not have a car available, and 25.4% report that they use public transit. So just to get an idea of what's in the area, so in terms of pharmacies, this is kind of a snapshot of just a Google Maps image of the pharmacies located in Humboldt Park. So, and none of these are 340B pharmacies, so that means that their prescriptions could be purchased at a lower cost. For grocery stores, so about 49% of households receive food stamps or benefit, but still 46% of the households were food insecure. So, and there is just a general lack of fresh fruit and vegetables nearby. Just some park districts, because a big thing with diabetes is we, talk about exercise. So these are some park districts that are nearby. The Chicago Park District, which sometimes people are able to get into free, is about a 34-minute walking distance from our location where we were at. So their main health concerns, top two would have to be diabetes and obesity. So according to the Sinai survey, about 47% of adults are obese, and about 13% of adults are diagnosed with diabetes. Just some other concerns are PTSD and depression, domestic and intimate partner violence. So in terms of how we access this site, it originally began with the UPharm class of 2018 and Eva Hernandez. So she was our original buy-in. So this has been a project that we've been going on for over 5 years now. Unfortunately, Eva Hernandez retired, so I was luckily able to get it restarted with the help of College of Nursing, in particular, Allison Moy. She's a College of Nursing student, as well as Virginia Rising. So she is now in charge. She kind of took over Eva's place at the Mile Square location. So this is what the outside of the site looks like. So it is Mile Square Health Center located in Humboldt Park. Our partners were, again, Virginia Rising, Allison Moy. We also had a nutritionist, a primary care provider, behavioral health, and then, of course, ourselves, the pharmacy. So our goals for the project were, we wanted to provide a supportive and educational diabetes wellness group. We wanted to aid in the improvement of self-management behaviors, as well as just present culturally sensitive pharmacy educational materials for the patients and also providers. So the curriculum, it was a 4-week session. Week 1 was just kind of a meet and greet, and we were discussing, our curriculum and anything that the group members wanted to hear from us or they wanted to learn about. Week 2 was nutrition, healthy eating, and exercise. So we discussed a little bit of the My Plate method and just ways of eating healthy despite their economic disparity. So it's hard to ask patients to eat healthy if they don't have access to it. Week 3 was pharmacy week. That's going to be on the next slide. And week 4 was mental health day. So we kind of just had an open discussion of the feelings and thoughts that the group members were experiencing in terms of just daily living, having to deal with their diabetes. So again, week 3 was pharmacy. So we went over blood glucose goals, our A1C goals, medication side effects and how to relieve those side effects. We talked to them about hyper and hypoglycemia. We even talked about herbals and supplements, and then over-the-counter medications. Due to the pandemic, we were virtual. So as you can see, there's a picture of our group that we had most recently. So in terms of how we assessed the attendees, we did a pre and post survey of the following 5 questions. So these 5 questions were things that we were going to discuss throughout our presentation. So we wanted to make sure that what we were presenting was actually going to help the attendees. So these are our results. So in terms of pre-survey results, as you can see, more people had incorrect answers than correct. And it was for each question. So we actually had two groups. So we had a session last fall of 2020 and then another one this past spring. We just ended it. And so there was a total of four group members that attended that these results are based off of. So as you can see, our post-survey results, we did have the first two questions, which everyone got correct. So just to discuss it, group members did have a general knowledge of their monitoring parameters and goals, but that was about as good as their knowledge had went. So again, like I said, we hosted two sessions. Each session had two attendees. And based on our post-survey results, it did indicate that they had improved knowledge of the content, and just based on the general response from them, they felt they were more knowledgeable and that they had learned a lot. So some obstacles that the group members face is just food accessibility and the ability to exercise, especially during this pandemic. A lot of them mentioned that, they were too scared to go to the gym or to go out with everything going on. And just some obstacles in general for our project. We were in person for the past 3 years, but then the pandemic occurred, and so we weren't able to be in person. And so that caused us to go virtual, which again, with the socioeconomic issues, a lot of patients could not have access to the internet or a computer. And so it was just lack of access to virtual meetings kind of decreased our outcome. So in conclusion, although we did have a low attendance, it was clear that we made a huge impact on those that did attend. So one person even told us, I just quoted her, "You ladies have taught me so much, and I'm very grateful for all the information you have given me." That person just showed so much gratitude towards us by the end, and she was just so happy that we were there and we were able to give her all this information, because she was kind of completely lost in the beginning. And then also, this is just a really big thing for me coming to conclusion, because we have had the relationship with West Humboldt Park for over 5 years. I've been able to, continue it on for the past 4 years that I've been at UIC, and I know Nelmari will take it on. So in terms of future plans, like I said, my colleague Nelmari will go ahead and take the lead. We're already kind of starting that relationship again with the Mile Square Center. And then just continuing our presence, our UIC UPharm students at the Mile Square Health Center. Hopefully we can resume our in-person group meetings depending on what happens with the pandemic. And then just to continue to reach out to more community members to improve health outcomes. So just some acknowledgements. I want to thank Dr. Awe for giving me this opportunity. Dr. Drew Young, she helped us kind of go over our presentation and make sure that everything was correct and presentable. College of Nursing, Virginia Rising, and Allison Moy, and then Nilmari for joining me and kind of just taking on this project with me. Any questions?
So Stephanie, it seems as if this was really like a team.
Right.
Dr. Awe, I think you're muted. Dr. Awe, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to fight my dog off of my computer and all that. I just wanted to make a comment, and maybe you can enlighten us. It seems to me that the Mile Square, the West Humboldt Park project is really an interprofessional teamwork. Can you address that? So there's pharmacy, there's nursing, what other healthcare team, and how
Yeah.
did that work?
So it was a really big team effort, and it really helped myself and Nilmari learn how to, take part in that interprofessional learning. So it was College of Nursing, so we had nurses. We had a mental health professional, so she was able to take lead on the mental health talk. We had a nutritionist, so he was talking about the My Plate method and how they can eat healthier. And that was it for this round, but previous years, we've had dentists, we've had Zumba instructors, podiatrists. So these past 4 years have really been just a lot of interprofessional relationships and group, teamwork.
Thank you. Any questions for Stephanie? We're about, let's see, 4 or 5 minutes over. But if you have questions for Stephanie, please feel free to ask.
So Alfredo asked, what were the most effective ways of learning for people of the community? So I think it was really just us kind of talking it out. So we tried not to take really like a lecturing aspect to this. We were more so, we had slides there present, but it was really just them talking to us and asking us questions and us kind of showing it to them. So I think that really helped, just being able to talk it out as opposed to just getting a bunch of information thrown at them. If that answers your question, Alfredo.
Well, since there are no more questions, again, thank you all for this great presentation. And I want to thank all the other UPharm students for attending this presentation. I hope it was beneficial to all of you in terms of how to conduct your own capstone projects. I think also what we're going to do is give the email addresses of the doctors that are graduated in May, Stephanie, all of you, so that you can reach out to them to find out how they did their projects, and if you can continue from where they left off. So that would be great.